Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. Tonight we have Chris Wilson with us, Senator Chris Wilson, I should say, and from Cache Valley.
Yes.
So, Chris, this is the first time you've been on, so why don't we talk about you just a little bit? Maybe you could tell people why you got into politics, where you grew up, and what you do.
Well, I appreciate that. First of all, this is exciting. I can't imagine anything more exciting to do on a Friday afternoon after the session than to come be with Senator Johnson on his podcast. We talk a lot about it during the session, and I know watched a few episodes, and so I'm just excited to be here.
It's good to have you.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And Senator Chris Wilson, District 2, which is most of Cache County and all of Rich County. And a lot of people think I needed my head examined when I got into politics. I ran in 2020 and was successful, and this has been my fourth session. I grew up in Cache Valley in Logan, and very proud of my heritage. Like many people in Cache Valley, we come from pioneer stock, and my great-great-grandpa and grandma helped settle Logan. Actually, the first people that lived in a log cabin in Logan in 1859 came over from Wellsville at Mons Fort, and so it's been they farmed in Smithfield called Summit Creek. So I've just always had a stewardship, trying to do what I could for the community. I own a small business, Wilson Motor Company. I'm third generation business owner there. My grandpa started in World War II in 1943 during the war effort. And
so has it always been Ford?
Yeah, we've had Ford. And in 1943, my grandpa was working for the Chevy store, tried to buy the Chevy store because the owner left, and Chevrolet wouldn't approve him. So the Ford owner called him and said, come on over and buy it. It was Ralph's Ford. My grandpa went over and bought the Ford store, and then subsequently put the Chevy guy out of business, who came in from Dearborn, who they kind of a puppet dealer, I guess. But anyway, so we've been there 80 years, and I just wanted to give back to the community.
So have you been in that same location?
Yeah, we've been there for 80 years. I've got a photo in my office of Wilson Motor in 1946.
Wow.
So it means a lot to me, a lot of heritage, and been in the same location. We expanded the second location in 2010.
So that's a used car.
Yeah, pre-owned, used car.
I forgot it's pre-owned now.
Well, we got to use the right terminology. It's kind of funny. It's still used cars and trucks.
Yeah.
But, and then went through the Logan school system, graduated from Logan High, went to Utah State, and graduated with a degree in finance at Utah State, and then stayed and joined the family business and been there ever since. And it's worked out pretty well, and I just appreciate the opportunity.
Well, it's good. It's good you got into the pre-owned cars, because during COVID and stuff, it was hard to get cars.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, we had some issues with chips, and we've actually always done very, very well. Our market up in Cache Valley, we have a little bit lower medium income. So used cars, we've always sold more used cars than new, and that's something my dad taught me. Took me to my first auction I bought in. First car I bought was in 1980.
Wow!
Right, as a senior in high school, just graduating, he took me down and I bought my first car and kind of learned the used car business, which has been more of our backbone than new, but.
And you do wholesaling too, right?
Yeah.
So you will go to other dealers and buy the cars that come in on trade.
Yep. And so that's been a big part of business. We have Wilson Wholesale, and that allows us to bring in a lot more pre-owned vehicles. We have about 130 cars in stock pre-owned, and so it helps us. And we've been very, very fortunate with our great customers and great employees that have helped us for a number of years. I do have very, very low turnover. That really helps us to improve.
So when did you get? Yeah, and you do Nissan too, right?
Yeah, we picked up Nissan franchise in 1981.
Oh, in 81.
So we've had it it was Datsun at that time.
Oh yeah.
And then they made one of probably the biggest blunders in business history. They changed the name from Datsun, which was their name in America, and changed it to Nissan, which was the corporate name in Japan. But they use it as what not to do. in a lot of businesses, don't change your names. It took us years to get people to acclimate from Datsun, which had a great name, to Nissan.
Right.
And anyway, so it's kind of interesting, but we made through it. Now, 40-something years later, it's been Nissan.
Oh,
we've been very, very happy.
That's cool.
With our relationship.
So let's talk a little bit about what interested you in politics, because you and I were running at the same time.
Yeah.
That's when I got to know you, so that was kind of fun. But
I tell you honestly, Senator, having those phone calls back and forth, you and I both had some very tough primary races.
Yeah, we did.
And we kind of helped each other. I don't think we'd actually met. We have mutual friends.
Yeah.
Had always, my friends have talked very highly of you. And so when you'd call me and we'd talk and kind of exchange stories, it kind of helped pump me up a little bit and kind of gave me the support, knowing that you had a lot of people that were a little bit, because I guess we kind of both went against incumbents, if you will. So,
well, yours was an incumbent for sure. Mine was a up and coming, but everybody, seemed to know him, and he was kind of the hand selected, one to win, I guess.
Yeah, the person in waiting that. Yeah. But that meant a lot to me, and I'd started to be the first time I was a state delegate or a county delegate was in 2002. It was kind of interesting. At that time, I was in the bishopric, and the church came out and said they wanted everybody to go to caucus. And so we canceled our bishopric meeting on that Tuesday night. And so I went over to the caucus meeting and actually got elected for both a state and a county delegate. And if you will, the next is history. And from then on, I've been a state and county delegate and got more involved. I've always been involved with politics. I've never missed a presidential election, starting in 1980 when I voted, and was a big Ronald Reagan fan.
Oh, yeah.
And remember those fun days? Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of come from the same era there.
Yeah, we remember the 18% prime interest rates from the Carter administration.
Yeah.
That made it tough in the car business.
I bet it did.
It was really tough. We had some tough years, and I want, like I said, having those kind of high interest rates, affordability was very difficult that time. So
and you were working with your dad in the dealership then, right?
Yeah. We kind of went in, and so I appreciate the opportunity. My grandpa and dad were, you never want to, follow the guy, but I unfortunately got to follow the guy who followed the guy. So my grandpa and my dad did a great job, and he taught me, I think, very well. And taking care of customers is very, very important. They're my friends and neighbors.
Well, and the cool thing is you guys have always been involved in the community, too. I know you're quite involved at Utah State, especially with sports programs and stuff. And
that, in fact, it's, somebody asked me last night, we went to a function at USU, they had a function for the Old Main Society, and somebody asked me when I started helping or contributing, and my best recollection is in the late '60s. My dad was good friends with Ralph Mon, who was the track coach at Utah State. And anyway, we started having him drive one of our vehicles. So we've been doing it for a long time, and trying to support Utah State and their athletic
So that's one of the things that you do with the athletic department, though. You loan them cars, basically.
Yeah, we provide 4 vehicles right now. We started with 1, then went to 2, and then went to 3, and then 4. When Coach Gary Anderson came to town, and now head coach Blake Anderson drives our vehicle, one of the assistant basketball coaches, and 2 other assistant football coaches.
So do you basically set it up on a lease, or how do you?
We do, and then that's just kind of a donation we make, right. And then and we also, as you know, as I talked about on the Senate floor, we also have some NIL contracts with some with players up there, and so and they drive a couple of our vehicles too.
Yeah.
So
that's quite a thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's talk about your race. So you were running against Lyle Hilliard, who had been there. I think since the Pioneers had come into Logan, right?
Yeah, he'd been there. In fact, he'd been there for 40 years. He was there 4 years in the House. Got first elected in 1980, and then he was elected to the Senate. Spent 36 years in the Senate, and he'd done a really great job. Yeah. I appreciate everything.
He was a great representative.
Yeah,
of Cache Valley.
for many years, and we had met in 2019, and he had indicated to me that he wasn't going to run, and so I had formed a committee with his blessing, and we were off and running, and then he he decided that he was going to run again.
Yeah.
But at that time, I had already paid for a website and all these things, and so I just felt like he needed to stay in the race. And we ended up doing pretty well. My wife and I worked really, really hard and had some great help from some people, and we're successful. But I wasn't quite thinking we had as good a chance as my wife did. She was kind of the one that was the positive enforcement, and along with phone calls from Senator Johnson once in a while.
Yeah.
So, but we were successful and actually did really well.
Yeah,
in the
you
primary.
put together a great team.
Yeah,
And then
we had a great team. Yeah.
yeah,
So.
that was that was quite the race.
But I barely got through the convention, because at that time of COVID, we didn't really even have all the contact information. You remember we didn't have all the phone
it was
numbers or
tough.
email addresses for the delegates, and so it was a tough time. And with COVID coming on, I still was trying to work with I had 70-something employees that were all very, very concerned about COVID and whether we'd be around. I had employees sit in my office in tears, concerned about whether they're going to be able to make the payment and put food on the table. So I kind of had to shift a little bit to my responsibilities with the business and my employees and customers. And so there for a while, I had to put everything on the back burner and we made it through convention by about 3 or 4 delegate votes. And then once that happened, we were all in and started campaigning in May, and it went really well.
Yeah.
So we're excited.
Yeah, I remember the night of the election when it was decided.
I think you called me.
I did call you right when your results came in because you were ahead by so much.
Yeah, we were. I was very, very surprised, and my wife and I were sitting in her office, and she was looking at the computer, and it was a little bit late in coming the results through, and I was sitting in a chair. And all of a sudden, she was sitting there, and we were kind of waiting, and I was just kind of sitting there going, oh boy, and she looked at the computer, and she went. She got this look and looked at me, and I went, what? And she goes, come here. And so I came around her desk and looked at the computer, and I went, oh my goodness, they transposed the numbers.
Yeah.
And then she goes, no, they didn't. And then we just celebrated. We gave each other big hugs, and then my phone blew up.
Yeah.
And it was Senator Johnson calling it from your party. So yeah, from your victory party.
Yeah, we had a good time that night. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I didn't bring anybody in because I didn't expect much, but my wife and I, it was really a great experience.
Yeah, Linda Pipkin said, "Oh, we got to have a party," and I thought, "Oh, what if I lose? This won't be a very happy party." But, yeah, but that was a lot of fun. It was good to get to know you over that.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about this last session.
Wow.
Quite, yeah, you had a couple bills early on that did well.
Yeah. In fact, it was interesting. I had a couple bills. I did there was 2 different bills I got through committee that I'd worked on. One of them was Truth in Taxation, which we revamped and kind of solidified and gave some teeth to the state tax commission to make sure that these entities are following the Truth in Taxation laws and rules. Yeah. Some of them are not advertising what they should have. And so we kind of put some teeth into that. And that came from a constituent of mine, Diane Schaefer, that works in the auditor department up at Cache Valley in Cache County. And she came up with the idea, and I started working with the committee. And Utah Taxpayers Association was a big part of that, Rusty Cannon. And so that was the first afternoon we got that passed through the Senate. I had 2 bills, and boy, I kept thinking it was going to let up, but it just didn't. I felt like this session, being our 4th session, I don't know what your feelings were, but it seemed like it was higher intensity and a little more stressful, and we were working on a lot of things, and of course the budget.
What does that Truth in Taxation thing do? Just so people kind of understand.
What it does is it just solidifies. There were some entities that weren't advertising what they should be advertising. How much is this tax going to cost? What's an average home value, and what's it going to affect the average home value and average businesses? Sometimes they were putting lower amounts. So, and then it says you have to know how much money you're going to collect. and what the rate's going to be. There's a little bit confusion on there on how the rates work.
Right.
So, and basically it also does is that the county auditors, if they so choose, may also audit to make sure that they follow the procedures. And then if they don't follow the procedures, it gives the tax commission the opportunity not to verify or that rate. Okay. Unless they have followed the procedures. Gives some teeth to truth in taxation. Yeah. We've been very, very fortunate in the state of Utah because we've had truth in taxation for many, many years. We've been the standard across the country. And we just needed to tighten it up a little bit and give some teeth to it because our taxpayers, they deserve that. They need to know what the information is so they can show up and either
what a lot of taxpayers, I heard from a lot of my constituents where they were saying, well, property values went up so much, our taxes went up a lot. And what most people don't understand is under truth in taxation, if the value of the homes goes up, then the tax rate has to come down.
Exactly.
The revenue has to be neutral.
Yep.
So you shouldn't have had any tax increases at all
great
in terms
point.
of the raw number, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And what happened is so many of the cities and the counties actually had these hearings.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, there were
to raise
like
taxes.
100 of them. Yeah.
And I think they kind of took advantage of the fact that property values were going up, and it kind of gets hidden in that, right?
Well, and a lot of them say, well, let's hold the rate. Well, a lot of people don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Like you said, they have an overall amount of property tax that they can collect. So if the values go up, then like you said, the rate should go down to counter the rate of the value of the home.
Yeah, so they might have this hearing and they might say, "Oh, we're going to hold the rate," right?
Well,
that basically means you're going to pay a lot more tax.
Pay a lot more tax, and most people are going, "Oh, great, they're going to hold the rate." No, and it's a little confusing. A lot of people, like you said, don't understand that. But I felt like the system needed to be revamped and relooked at, which we did. We put some teeth to it, and kind of made sure that everybody was on board that this is the process, and you need to follow it. And if you don't, then your rate's not going to be, you're going to go back to your old rate. You've got to, and there's also some auditing possibilities from the county auditor if they want to get involved. So I think it's a great bill. A lot of people didn't know about it because we got it through at the very beginning. I think I was done with it in about the first week or so.
Yeah,
we got it through the Senate and the House, and had some help from Representative Kevin Stratton, who's on our interim revenue tax, and he got it through. But we got it through, and nobody's really been talking about it. But I think it's a great bill. I've had some people reach out saying, "Hey, thanks, Senator Wilson. That's a great bill and something that we needed to protect, I think, our taxpayers."
Yeah.
So,
yeah, which we're always fairly
well, I think especially now.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that process is followed by every taxing entity.
Right.
So,
well, let's take a break.
Okay, great.
And then we'll come right back.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Coming up on the next episode of PoliticIt.
Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt Podcast. Tonight we have my friend Mike Kennedy.
Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, who's running for Congress.
That's right.
Yeah, the only bad thing about that is we're going to miss you in the Senate. But,
I know it's been a privilege.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. We're talking to Chris Wilson, Senator Chris Wilson from Cache Valley. And
Great.
So, before the break, we talked a little bit about things that you're doing. I wanted to ask you just about, you worked some on Second Amendment stuff. The ideas you had on preemption, I thought were really important. And can you explain what that means?
A little bit, yeah. No, this was a couple years ago. The preemption law, they're trying to protect firearms and who has the right to enforce firearm legislation and regulation. Basically, it says that the Utah State Constitution, that the state has that right. Well, we had instances where Salt Lake County was putting their own regulations, if you will, on firearms and on background check, a few things like that. So the bottom line is, 2 previous years before the preemption firearms Second Amendment bill was defeated, did not get through the Senate. So Representative Malloy and I got together at some of our Second Amendment caucus meetings, and we basically put the bill in my name, and changed a few things on it, and I was able to get it through the Senate. And then we got it through the House and got it passed. But the preemption firearm bill basically said that the state of Utah, our Utah beloved Constitution, is who is going to regulate firearms. It's not going to be a political subdivision. It's not going to be Salt Lake County. I even had a city down south who wanted to outlaw firearms in their city parks. And I basically got a phone call and called them and reminded them, the city councilman that was trying to do that. And I said, well, the state of Utah regulates firearms, and somebody that's traveling through your beloved city doesn't know that, goes into your city park with his grandkids or whatever, and then gets arrested. We want to make sure it's uniform law throughout the state. The same in Logan as is in St. George. So this preemption bill, I think, was very, very important. Like I said, it had gone through for 2 years previous in the Senate. We were able to get it through Senate and the House. It's great legislation. And so that was session before last session. I'm getting a little bit. No, it was two sessions ago, because last session was the ESG bills that tried to spearhead that in the Senate.
Yeah, and you were really successful on pushing that legislation forward. Can you just briefly explain?
Yeah, briefly, we had 5 ESG bills to fight back against federal overreach, and obviously overreach from institutions that were trying to regulate environmental, social, and governance. And we don't have time to go into that, but everybody knows ESG is probably the biggest threat we have to our economy, United States economy. So we ran 5 bills. We had many meetings, and I was fortunate enough to be able to run 3 of those bills. 2 of them in the Senate. One was a resolution that basically said our Attorney General, our governor, and all our state elected officials need to do everything they can to push back on ESG, and that included lawsuits, which we have filed. And but the ESG was number one. The 2 bills we went through the Senate, I think, were great. Was on the state to make sure that with our fiduciary responsibility was to maximize our return. And the other one was to make sure that we are doing business with companies that aren't basically doing business with all kinds of businesses. The thing we were worried about is we had many businesses that were lashing out on mining, agriculture, timber, firearm industries, and they were being punishing these industries for what they were being. And basically what it was is we only do contracts with businesses that don't discriminate. Right. Really, it's a discrimination thing. So I think they were great bills last year. They were heavy lift. We got them through. We had a lot of opposition, and I had one lobbyist from D.C. that I think gave us one of the greatest compliments we could. And this person was pro ESG, kind of that far left, and they made the comment that our ESG bills were the worst in the country. Oh, so I told my wife we must do something right there in Utah if they thought they were bad bills. But I think they were great bills, and really that pushback has really helped. I think kind of stifle that a little bit. We have to be careful, but I think so far we've done a great job with other states in leading that charge.
Well, and you work pretty tightly with the financial community, and we're a big banking center here, and I think you were very careful about making sure you weren't punishing financial institutions and putting them in a bad place, but yet enforcing the idea that people who invest our money are fiduciary. They have a responsibility to make sure we get returns for our investments.
Well, that's a great point. I appreciate that, because we were trying to thread that needle, and we spent a lot of time. We had our caucus room, 20-something people in a room talking from different banking associations and stuff, and they were great. They really worked with us. They felt there was a need for this legislation, kind of gave them cover. And so I really appreciate them. They were very, very helpful in
they helped you really thread that needle to make sure that you weren't going to do anything that was punitive of
Yep.
our financial institutions in
Yeah,
the state.
yeah. And the discrimination bill that we ran on ESG was based on our Israel bill. For any companies that were discriminated against Israel, we have the same law that we don't do business with people that discriminate against our ally Israel. Right. We just made that part of the ESG and expanded it into these other industries. So it worked out really well, and our drafting attorneys did a great job. Our staff's amazing.
Now your bill this year, we'll get to the tax cut, which actually warms my heart when I think about cutting taxes. But talk to us just a little bit about that.
Well, I think one of my proudest moments, probably yours too, is we've been there. There's our 4th year and our 4th straight tax cut.
Right.
And so when I got thinking, I filed my tax cut bill on May 4th, the first night that we could open. I stayed up till midnight, and I had the tax cut for 20 basis points. Based on where we're at with our budget numbers and our revenue numbers. But so I had that. I've been working on it all summer, working on it in our Rev and Tax committees with Taxpayer Association and the Tax Commission. So when it came down to our numbers were such that I scaled that back to a 10 basis point cut, knowing that when you take that.
So what does that mean? What does that mean to someone that's not a finance guru?
Well,
like
you're a
yourself?
finance guru, but the bottom line is it goes from right now our current tax rate is 4.65%. It puts it down to 4.55%. And when we started in the legislature, it was 4.95, and we've been able to cut Social Security taxes, improve investment tax for credit for children, and then our tax cuts, which is the
well, and don't forget the Social Security. Yeah, well, you did mention that, the Social Security thing.
And I'm hoping next year we'll be able to maybe do another bite of the apple of that. Right now, we've kind of exempted about 85% of people on Social Security. $75,000 and under is
so if you're making less than $75,000, you don't pay tax on your Social Security.
No,
benefit.
You don't. It's just, and so I hope with next year, and we looked into that this year. I was on the tax working group last year, and I fought really hard to keep that Social Security. We went from 70 to 75 last year. And so I hope we can continue to work on that, just like we've done in the tax cut. A little bit at a time. We've as President Adams, who has been wonderful as a leader, we measure twice and we cut once. So we want to make sure that it's responsible, it's level-headed, and I think we've done that. But when you look over the last 4 years at that tax cut, we need to stay competitive with our neighbors, our neighboring states. And when you look at Wyoming, Nevada at 0% state income taxes, Arizona's down to 2.5%, we have to be competitive. I've read a numerous number of studies that says that it does matter to companies as they're looking for places to locate. And our economy is great right now, and one
of the best in the country.
Well,
right?
if not the best.
Yeah.
Obviously, with 16 straight years of the best economic outlook. Looking down for the future. So we want to continue that. We want to continue to be a pro-business, and that obviously helps with create jobs and higher paying jobs. And so it's important that we stay competitive. And we've done a great job. We've been able to cut taxes. We've been able to improve funding for education, billions and billions of dollars. Our teachers are making more money. And what you've been a great part of, being the chair of education in the Senate. But we've been able to increase our spending for transportation, infrastructure, being the Senate chair of IGG, Infrastructure and General Government. Right. That's been a big part for me to be able to give UDOT the funds they need with the amount of growth we've had. And then we've been able to fund our, social services, health care. We've been able to help those in need. And so I'm just amazed all this we've been able to do and cut
still
taxes.
Yeah.
And help people.
And I appreciated this year being able to sign as a co-sponsor on your bill, because I just think that's important for us to be fiscally sound as a state, and not, we could easily cut taxes more, but there's other things that have to have priorities too.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate
education, healthcare,
Yeah, well, and you were the first one that came up to me and said, Chris, what can I do? I'd like to be so I appreciate that, and being able to have you being a co-sponsor. And the other thing, in our infrastructure and general government, we're still obviously looking at the budget. And I want to know that our staff, and we were able to find $32 million in our committee that we were able to get back from different areas that we felt there was too much money and there was some funds and excess. We were able to bring that back. So we're consistently looking at the budget, looking at different agencies that are under our responsibility to make sure they're efficient and effective in spending money. And that's still, being a small business owner, that's still, I'm kind of a geek when it comes to being able to read a financial statement and being able to find the story.
Well, we're lucky to have someone like you with that background to be able to look deeply into things and make the cuts that are necessary without crippling our economy, right?
Well, we'll keep looking. We'll keep looking, and I've been very, very fortunate. President Adams gave me the opportunity to be Senate Chair of Infrastructure General Government, over the UDOT budget and over some other things, and I've been very, very fortunate to be in a good position to hopefully use some of my small business skills I've learned over the last 40 years.
I think that's important to have that perspective in the legislature. Well, we're out of time.
Oh, gosh. That went fast.
Yeah, it did.
All right.
Thanks for coming in. Again.
Oh, what a pleasure. Thank you, Senator Johnson.
And Senator Wilson, Cache Valley.
Thank
we'll see
you.
you guys next week.
Yep.